Now, don't be misled by his modesty, but Professor Jibrin Ibrahim's remarkable passion for psephology, independent political analysis, and extensive research, not to mention academic scholarship, have stirred the curiosity of many and made him considerably famous. Professor Jibo, as he's popularly known, has translated a lot of that prescient experience into independent policy advice to successive governments and think tanks, transformative ideas on national political problems accompanied by research that contributes to public life and causes policies to shape and change, whilst of course straddling the fence on either side of the political divide and taking care not to lean in any direction. So, as the inauguration looms and Nigerians prepare to cross the political threshold on May the 29th, ushering in new policy formulation and new decision-making, perhaps it's time once again to hearken to the professor's thinking on the new direction Nigeria should take, even as groups of power-craving politicians battle with their disintegrator guns to take over this country. What analysis does he have at this critical point in Nigeria's political and democratic history? Well, for his pre-inauguration assessment, I'm joined now in the studio by the Professor of Political Science and Chair of the Editorial Board of Nigeria's Premium Times newspaper, Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, who's also a noted psephologist and Senior Fellow at the Center for Democracy and Development. Prof, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Always a pleasure.
What is the national mood like in Nigeria as the reality of the inauguration dawns on them in a country where more people, almost double, voted collectively for the opposition than for the president-elect, Bola Tinubu? What is the attitude amongst the Nigerian people? Are they seeing this through rose-tinted glasses or through a foggy windshield?
I think the fact of the matter is that there are very different opinions. On the one hand, you had people who had expected somebody other than Tinubu would win, who are disappointed, and many of whom have believed it is somebody else that will be inaugurated. And as the days approach, they are now beginning to see that, well, constitutionally, by law, by convention, the person declared winner is the one that will be sworn in on the 29th. I don't know how the idea spread around that it will not happen this time, because I think this is a settled question in Nigeria's transition politics. Others who are on the winning side, as it were, are excited, they are happy, and they are looking forward to the transition with a lot of expectation that their leader, their elected president, would be able to make a significant difference to the process of governing Nigeria. Because if there's one issue that's clear to everybody, and I think there's a large consensus on that, is that Nigeria has not been properly governed over the last 8 years.
And we'll come to that in a minute, but I mean the supporters of the president-elect Bola Tinubu and APC supporters, your sense perhaps that there is exhaustion with all these protests about the legitimacy of the election, but also resilience to fervently hold on to what they believe is their victory and their mandate?
I think for them, the fact that they have a mandate is very clear. It's never a settled issue once you have a case in court. So even if they say with a lot of bravado that it's a settled issue, they do know there are always question marks, because at the end of the day, it's the Supreme Court that will give a final judgment, and that will take some months. But before then, he'll definitely be sworn in. I think part of the issue that has riled them a bit is this mobilization that he shouldn't be sworn in. And I think that really irritated a lot of them. But that was something that was predictable, because a lot of the supporters of Peter Obi, for example, were so sure from a very long time ago that he will emerge winner, and therefore enter the elections with that confidence and waited for that result, which they did not see. And of course, the disappointment, the frustration became a big factor in how they behaved subsequently.
So you could say anger on both sides and a determination that neither side is going to give up. So the further it goes, I mean, we're now less than a week away from the inauguration, the stronger people feel, whatever camp they're in.
Absolutely, because one of the issues about these elections is the very high level of emotions it generated. It's very different from 2019, where the emotions were very, very low, and people didn't really feel it was a significant election. In 2015, it was elation in the minds and attitudes of a lot of people. So this one is very highly charged emotions. And I think there is a sense in which the way in which the elections were conducted, some of the disappointments over the process created this very strong emotion in people that either something very wrong happened or something right happened.
So particularly for the opposition and ideological movements, if I might call it that, like the obedience, they struggle to have a normal life and perhaps pretend to live a normal life in the face of what they believe was a stolen mandate. And they're united in that belief, are they? And that's what keeps them going?
Absolutely. And I think if you recall, the very first press conference after the declaration of results, Peter Obi was very categorical that he is a veteran in reclaiming a stolen mandate through the courts, and that this is what's going to happen again. That was actually a very good move on his part, because it's calmed his people down. It gave them some confidence, and a lot of them continue to look at the adjudication process.
Right, but in that regard, sorry, I apologize for interrupting you. In that regard, and against the background of what you just told us, and the sense of injustice that they feel, how difficult will it be for them to accept the reality of a court ruling possibly going against their preferred candidate?
Well, a court ruling will be the final settlement of the matter. So they would definitely feel very disappointed. But in a sense, that would bring closure to the debate, because there's nothing else anybody could do about it.
Will it? Or do you see any danger on that horizon as a result of that? I mean, can life ever be back to normal in Nigeria after the fallout from the 2023 presidential election?
My view is that it will bring closure to it for the simple reason that the basic facts of the elections will then become clearer. They will move from seeing disappointment at not winning to seeing the gains they made in that election in less than 1 year. It was a spectacular movement that developed in a very short time. It created new energy for Nigerian politics. It brought in the youth who had shown very limited interest in politics previously into the political fray. And within that 1 year, they made spectacular progress. They gained a lot of seats. They won in a lot of states. I mean, at the end of the day, each of the leading 3 candidates got 12 states each or thereabouts. So that was spectacular progress, which they are not seeing now. Closure will open their eyes to some of those fundamentals and push them towards the fact that, well, Why don't we reorganize, re-energize, and ensure that next time we win with a clear majority where there'll be no argument over who is the victor?
That's a good analysis. Well, let's shift gears and turn to the outgoing administration of President Buhari in a country where many believe that the APC-led government was manifestly out of touch with the Nigerian people. What will be President Buhari's legacy?
Well, it will take us some time to work out his legacy, but for me, maybe the awards are the most appropriate ones. That for those 8 years, he was out of touch with what was going on in the country. And if you really listen to what Nigerians have been saying over the past 8 years, it's his lack of empathy at the various trials and tribulations Nigerians have been going through, the massive rise of insecurity, the killings, the massive rise of poverty. He didn't show any concern, really. He didn't speak to these issues, and he was very much like some sort of a prince over and above the people who didn't feel he needed conversations with citizens over some of the expectations they had over his performance, which did not happen, which they did not see, which they got deeply disappointed about, and which created quite a rupture between them and a president they had so much love, respect, and expectations upon.
So in that context, what will be the backdrop and the conditions for political and economic life as we enter the era of the Tinubu presidency?
I think Tinubu is coming in at a very difficult time because we've just gone through 8 years during which a lot of the major challenges were not addressed. And President Buhari knew the challenges because he spoke to Nigerians about them. That he will address massive insecurity, which was largely in the Northeast. Under his watch, it spread almost everywhere in the country, both in terms of intensity and loss of life and property. The question of youth employment, he emphasized that in his campaigns, that we must reverse that process where fewer and fewer Nigerians have access to jobs. That did not happen. The question of poverty. Under his 8 years, poverty grew every year to the level where over half of Nigerians, by the admission of his own statistical agencies, are suffering from multidimensional poverty. And Nigeria became officially declared the poverty capital of the world. Nigeria didn't deserve this. Nigerians didn't deserve it. And I feel there's a sense in which when you look at the flurry of what's happening over the past 2 weeks, of appointments, policy changes, renaming ministry, I don't recall in world history less than 2 weeks before you leave power after 8 years, you are renaming and reconstituting ministries. And you begin to wonder, are they really conscious that their mandate is about ended and that decisions for the future should be left to the incoming president? It's actually incredible, some of the things I'm seeing. Why are they releasing packages? Why are they releasing a development plan 2 months before they leave office? A plan that they did not implement when they were in office, and then decide, okay, I'm not going to do a plan, I won't implement a plan, but my successor bloody well has to do it, so I'll prepare one and give him and tell him to do that. It's very disrespectful for the incoming government, for a government to behave in that way.
So in that respect, I mean, what kind of presidency do you expect will follow? I mean, is Bola Tinubu likely to feel less emboldened in those circumstances, given not only how, I mean, given not just the things you're talking about, but the fact that his swearing in is following a disputed election, the perception that something dirty has taken place that shouldn't have taken place in terms of manipulation of the vote and so on, lots of ruffled feathers.
Well, he's a veteran politician. He's been in this game for long. He's very conscious of the history that in this country, the norm is to contest every election, often for good reason. But if that's the norm, if that's what happens with almost every election, I think for him, he'll be able to live with that. What I do hope really, and that's what's important for me, is that the fact that he engages with a lot of political network may allow him focus on the concerns of ordinary Nigerians and develop approaches and strategies to address those concerns. But above all, to be able to engage Nigerians in a conversation about how they understand their problems and what they want to be priority for the incoming government. The government is coming into power at a time when there are very difficult fiscal and financial challenges, and that there will be limited resources to do all the things that need to be done. So it's a moment of very difficult choices to be made, and the way in which those choices of priorities are made is what will be the marker of the incoming administration.
Prof, thank you very much indeed, as always. Professor Jibrin Ibrahim is a professor of political science, chair of the editorial board of Nigeria's Premium Times newspaper, and a senior fellow at the Center for Democracy and Development. Thank you very much indeed.